Hey guys, so it's me here. Before the video starts, there's an issue. For some reason, the sound for my video was not picking up on my mic. So the sound is coming just from the camera itself. So it's not the best audio you're going to hear from me, sadly, because this is my favorite video. I did my makeup, I did everything. But please, if you can, press play and just listen through the whole video just to hear my case of why I'm Still Here deserves this Oscar, because I do have a strong case for it. But the audio just is not going to be the best. It's not going to be the strongest. But if you can just sit through the whole video, press play, walk around, do your laundry. I don't mind. And thank you. Hey guys, what's up? It's me, your favorite negative Nancy, Jay Gibson here. And today on It Girl in Review, I'll be talking about I'm Still Here, starring Fernanda Torres. This is my prospective Oscar winner for 2025 Best Actress. Listening and watching a movie with another language and the subtitles below in English, you may not fare well with this movie. With I'm Still Here, it is during the 1960s to 70s military coup and dictatorship in Brazil. Now, it is controversial, but it was a dictatorship. But this movie was boycotted originally when it was coming out by the far right in Brazil because they don't agree that it was a dictatorship. So there is information I do want to put into this video before I do my, analysis and synopsis of the movie because it is about history and it is a delicate subject. The 1964 Brazilian coup d'etat. So a coup d'etat, or simply a coup, is typically an illegal and overt attempt by a military organization or other government elites to unseat an incumbent leadership. Golpe de Estado no Brasil, M. 1964, was the overthrow of Brazilian President João Goulart by a military coup from March 31st to April 1st, 1964, ending the Fourth Brazilian Republic 1946 to 1964, and initiating the Brazilian military dictatorship 1964 to 1985. The coup took the form of a military rebellion, the declaration of a vacancy in the presidency by the National Congress on April 2nd, the formation of a military junta, the supreme command of the revolution, and the exile of the president on April 4th. In his place, Ranieri Mazzilli, the president of the Chamber of Deputies, took over until the election by Congress of General Humberto de Alencar Castelo Branco, one of the main leaders of this dictatorship or military coup. Fun fact, the first president under this dictatorship, Humberto, died 3 years later in 1967 by a plane crash. It is about a family, but the story essentially is about Rubens, the husband. So this isn't the overview yet. This is a bit about the history of Rubens. Yes, this is a spoiler. So again, if you would like to watch I'm Still Here, you have to go to theaters. Please stop this video right now and go and watch this movie. It's worth it. Rubens Bayort Paiva. He was born December 26, 1929, and died maybe 21st of January 1971. Was a Brazilian civil engineer and politician who was a congressman at the Brazilian Chamber of Deputies. Opposed the implementation of the military dictatorship in Brazil in 1964. Due to his involvement with activities deemed subversive by the dictatorial regime, he was arrested by the military forces and subsequently tortured and murdered. His remains were never found. This movie and this story would not have been a thing if what happened to Rubens never happened and he was still alive today. So if you've seen this movie, please comment below, like, subscribe, and make sure you're following me on Spotify, It Girl in Review, just to listen to me. The video is only on YouTube, but you can listen to me on Spotify and other streaming platforms if you're just driving or doing laundry. Make sure you rate me as well. Give me 5 stars, even if you disagree with me. Hit the trailer.
Sua mãe, mulher mais linda do mundo. Seus documentos. Anda, anda!
Ficando perigoso demais aqui, Rubens. Deputado Rubens Paiva.
O que aconteceu?
O meu marido tá em perigo.
Todo mundo tá em perigo, Unise.
Sumiu.
Não precisa sorrir.
Por que não?
O editor pediu. Uma foto menos feliz.
Ah, ele quer triste. Nós vamos sorrir. Sorriam.
Now, the overview. Unise Paiva begins a lonely battle to learn the truth behind the disappearance of her husband, former PTB deputy Rubens Paiva, while trying to keep her family together. Now, before I go on with the cast, this movie is a bit complicated to tell because it's not just at one point in time. They go through about 3 different time points or time slots around their lives as a family. So it goes from 1970 to 1996 to 2014. Majority of the movie, though, is from 1970. When looking for the cast, it is hard because, again, Google does discriminate against non-English speaking movies at times. So when you're looking for the cast, you may find the leading cast members, but like, for instance, she has 5 kids that I want to talk about. I cannot find the freaking 5 kids for the life of me. With that, I will only be calling the actors by their characters' names. Let's begin. We start out in 1970s in Rio de Janeiro. And currently in Rio de Janeiro, Unise and Rubens are with their family and they have a beautiful house with their kids right next to the beautiful beach. You see their youngest son, who I remember his name, Marcelo. He is at the beach. They're all having fun, having a great time. The kids are playing volleyball. Music is playing. Beautiful day in Rio de Janeiro. They find a random dog and they ask around, hey, whose dog is this? Whose dog is this? And Marcelo takes it back to his house and says, oh no, can we keep it? Goes to his dad because he knows better to ask his mom. And he tells his dad, oh, well, his mom being Eunice, oh, well, mom told me to come and ask you. He lies, of course. And his dad, Ruben, says, well, then, okay. He budges because obviously the dad is the easy scapegoat when hard decisions need to be made for the kids. They have a few parties. They have, I think, a graduation party or birthday party for Vera, their oldest daughter. It was just a beautiful setting because you see the family friends, you see the culture of Brazil in the 1970s, how they're dressed, how America has influenced how people dress there as well. The different music. Throughout this film, there's so much Brazilian music that just sounds amazing for that time period of the 70s. At that time in Brazil, because their independence is still fresh and still new, a lot of Brazilians spoke French apparently as well. So Eunice also spoke French outside of Portuguese, her native language. Unise is a mixture of, I believe in the film they said, Spanish, French, Portuguese. Like she's a mixture of a few different European countries. That's Eunice's background. Throughout watching this movie, I found that my heart was I was on the edge of my seat because I was so stressed. I do not look at the overviews. I do not watch the trailers of movies before I see them. I don't do any of that because I want to go on blind. But with this movie, I was so stressed something horrendous was going to happen. So how they filmed this freaking movie was like a horror film because I was like, you guys have me stressed. In the beginning scene when they're following Marcelo to the house, you think he's going to get hit by a car or something. Like, it's just, the film has me on the edge of my seat in the 1970s. Okay, going back to the movie, Vera goes with a few friends. I think they're going from the movies back to her house. And on their way back, there's a military checkpoint. And this is where we realize it's a military dictatorship. So Vera and her friends are asked to get out of the car now, aggressively. They get out of the car. There's a whole checkpoint. Everyone's forced to get out of the car. They're looking for communists. So they have pictures printed out and they're looking for people who may be labeled as communist. So looking at their faces, asking for IDs. and things like that. And it's a whole scary moment because you think something bad is going to happen, like they're going to get beat. Again, this movie is filmed incredibly. So we changed scenes to Eunice's beautiful house with Rubens, and they're like, "Where's Vera at? Vera should be here back by now." And Rubens is like, "Oh, don't worry, she's probably still coming back with her friends. She's old enough. She's old enough now. Like we don't have to worry about her." Vera comes back, and Vera goes into the kitchen, and they explain to them, "Oh my gosh, we got stopped by the military. It was horrible. They're such buttholes, blah blah blah." And they say, "Hey, calm down, calm down." And before I go on, let me just explain really quick who's all in the house, who's living in the house, essentially. You have Rubens, the husband, Eunice, the wife, you have Vera, the oldest child, and then you have four younger children in this house. And then you have a maid or housekeeper in the house as well, living there as well. So you have 8 people living in this house. That's how spacious this house kind of is. That's how people who had means were living in Brazil in the 1970s at the time, especially if you were an ex-politician. So Vera comes home, she's explaining like what's going on, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, the military stopped us. They were so aggressive. They were so rude." But luckily, one of her friends had his dad's card, who's a lawyer, and he's a military, doesn't want to deal with lawyers. So luckily, they were able to be let go. And eventually, because the situation in Brazil is getting bad for ex politicians or people who are against the dictatorship or military coup, people are leaving and fleeing Brazil. A few of Eunice and Rubens' friends are deciding to leave Brazil, and they're telling Eunice and Rubens, "Hey, come with us. We're going to London, where we can be a bit more free and a bit more safer." So they're going to London, and they say, "Hey, Vera's old enough now, and we're worried about her. We should go and send Vera." So they decide to go and send Vera to London to live abroad for a while. And so maybe it's a bit safer for her to come home because she's older. It's getting a bit dangerous here. They don't, and they just need a bit more time to not have to worry about her and her independence in the 1970s. That's kind of what I gauged from it. So Vera leaves. They say their goodbyes. And the next moment, the maid comes to Eunice and tells her, "Hey, these men are here. I didn't know that they're inside the house." Eunice goes downstairs and she sees these men in her house and they're asking for her husband Rubens. So essentially Eunice gets Rubens because, okay, you guys want him. She grabs them. She's a bit worried, but like still confused about what's going on. Rubens goes downstairs to them and they say, "Hey, we have to take you for an interview." So Eunice is like, "Wait, what's going on?" So they take him to the interview. And while Eunice walks around her house, because again, she has a spacious house, her and Rubens. Eunice walks around her house from the entranceway to the stairway, to the living room, to the kitchen, to the dining area. Like she's walking around her house and she sees men in each different room standing there looking around. How creepy is that? Mind you, she still has her kids there. Besides Vera, she's flown away. The guys, they just start shutting the blinds and making it dark in the house. And Eunice is like, "Hey, what's going on? What are you guys doing?" They're like, "Oh, hey, we are with the military and we need to ask him a few questions." That's where they took him. I don't know much more than that. You just have to wait for him to come back. And Eunice says, "Okay." She tries to stay calm because, again, her kids are there and it's a bit worrisome. So Eunice doesn't tell her kids anything, her youngest kids anything. So she just pretends like, "Oh, these men are just want to talk to your father. Everything's fine." So the kids go and eat because, again, it's early in the morning. The kids are eating. And their other daughter comes in the house. I think that's Maria. Maria comes in with her other friend after playing outside at the beach. And she, "Hey, I'm coming home. I want to eat something." And Eunice tells her, "Hey, like, no, actually, I think you should stay over your friend's house tonight." And she's like, "Okay." She leaves. So I'm like, okay, thank God, because that was a bit weird because she is a bit older and you're just nervous with a group of men in the house. When there's a young teenager, I'm like, I don't want RAPE scene. I just don't. Like, that's so, like, if it happened, yeah, you have to, like, mention that. But, like, I don't know. So Eunice is still asking them questions and she's going around the house and just trying to figure out what is going on. Some of these guys are weird and creepy, honestly. The kids are a bit confused, but they're ignoring it because they just assume, like, oh, they work for dad or, like, they work for the government. So they're not worrying too much. And then the daughter Maria comes back in the house. "Oh, no, you should go back out," Eunice tells her. They're in front of the door, of course, these military guys, and the blonde-haired military guy close slams the door and looks at her. And I'm like, oh my gosh, do not touch this little underage girl. And luckily, he's like, no, you're not going anywhere. Eunice basically brings her daughter upstairs and tells her, hey, this is what's going on. These guys took your father. They're part of the military. You cannot say anything. You cannot freak out right now. We need to stay calm and we need to just get together. She's like, okay, mom. And they're worried, of course. And she's like, can I sleep with you? She's like, no, you need to sleep with your brothers and sisters to make sure they're okay. She's like, okay. So she goes to sleep with her brother and sisters, and I'm like, oh my God, like, don't let her sleep alone. Like, what is going on? Eunice goes to her room, but she just can't sleep. So she hears something like a car coming up, and she thinks it's her husband, Rubens, coming back. After the interview, she runs downstairs, and the main leader of this watch group, he says, oh no, that was just a shift change. She's like, okay, do you have any more information? Can you call them and ask them an update on Rubens? He's like, sorry, I can't do that. I have no information for you. She goes to Rubens' office and she sees just pictures everywhere. It's a bit messy, so she just puts the pictures away, looks at some of them, and just really overwhelmed. She's exhausted. She looks exhausted. And she puts her pictures away, and the blonde guy who closed the door on the daughter earlier, he opens his eyes. And the next scene immediately after is someone touching the daughter. Thank God it's Unise waking her daughter up saying, hey, it's morning time. You need to wake up. We have to go to an interview. Baby, when I tell you my heart fell to my asshole. And they ask Eunice and her daughter to put these black bags over their heads so they can't see where they're going. We go to the next scene of Eunice in an interrogation chair. So they take the bag off of her head, and some man is asking her questions. She's like, wait, where's my daughter? I was just with my daughter. What did she say? And they say, hey, we need you to answer a few questions for us right now. Do you know any of these people? So they have a pamphlet of different pictures, and she has to point out all the people she knows. And they also ask her, did you know your husband was a communist or conspiring with communists against the military regime? And Eunice is like, wait, what? No, he was a congressman, but like he hasn't been in office in years. He has nothing to do with the government anymore. And they ask her again, do you know anyone in these pictures? And who has your husband Rubens been conspiring with? Eunice is confused still, and she's asking, where's my daughter? Where's my daughter? Because again, the worrisome part still right now is that they're going to assault her daughter. This is like the underlying feeling. And this whole portion of the movie is that someone's going to assault the daughter. This is just what you feel. This is how they set it up. This is how, the actors' energy is toward the daughter as well. It's insane how they set this up. Like, I was so stressed about the daughter as well. I was with the mom. Anyways, so Eunice is not answering the question because she's like, I don't know any of these people here. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. So they say, take her away. So they put the black bag back off her head and they bring her to her cell. The next scene, the door opens up her cell and the same officer who brought her there takes her to the interrogation room again. And the same interrogator is there and he says, hey, who in this photo book do you know? Can you recognize anyone in this photo book? Eunice points out her husband, Ruben. And she's like, yep, I know him. And they ask her, do you know anyone else? And she says, oh, that's my kid's teacher. And what is she doing here? And they said, oh, we believe she was handing mail and letters and things like that. She goes back to her cell and you just see like a timeline of different days because she's marking the wall of different days she's been there. You don't know exactly how many days she was there because I don't know if she knows how many days she was actually there, but it had to be over 10 days. Eventually, the same guy who brought her to the cell takes her out. He takes her outside and she's getting let go. Thank goodness. And she looks distraught. The person who brought her there, who's letting her go, she asks him, where's her daughter? Where's her daughter? And he tells her, hey, we only kept your daughter for a day and we let her go afterwards because she didn't know anything. So she's let go. She goes home. She checks on her kids in their room. There's no military guys in her house anymore, thank goodness. She goes in her room and she sees her daughter there. And she just tiptoes into the shower and she scrubs herself clean. She scrubs every inch of her body, every millimeter of her body clean because, again, she was in a cell, dirty, hungry, sleep deprived. It was horrendous for her. And in that scene, you just see her trying to make herself whole again. And so we go back to the morning, and Eunice is awake, and the kids are asking about where their dad is because their dad's still not home. And she's like, oh, he's still being interrogated. I'm not sure where he is, but he's fine. He's fine. He's fine. And Eunice tells Maria, you cannot tell the youngest kids a thing. They cannot know anything. We just have to pretend that everything's fine because they just wouldn't be able to handle it. Now the real hardship comes because Eunice is a woman in the 1970s. What do we know about women in the 1970s? They didn't own bank accounts, especially if you were a housewife. They didn't have access to money outside of their husbands. They didn't have really enough rights, especially to their homes, things like that. It was a lot of work for women back in the day. Anyways, with the financial independency that Eunice doesn't have, the maid tells Eunice, hey, I still need to get paid. Rubens only paid me up until December. Like, is there any way? I don't want to bother you, of course, right now, but like, is there any way I can get anything right now? So Eunice heads to the bank and she's like, hey, like, can I get any money out? And they said, no, they need a signature from Rubens because marriage doesn't mean anything back in the day. They need a signature from Rubens saying that it's okay for her to take money out, can't transfer money to the maid's account, can't do anything. And then Eunice starts saying, okay, she's starting to get into her reality of what's really going on right now. She goes to the bank and there was a house Rubens and Eunice was getting made. And so she decides to sell that land to get money, sell it underground because she knew her friend was a banker as well. And she's like, please just do it underground. He sells it. She gets money from it. She's able to go and pay the maid and just fire her essentially, but give her like money for what is owed to her. And with the rest of it, she puts some of it away and she brings Vera back from London back home. Vera's been writing letters and things like that, but I don't want to get too much into that. And when Vera comes home, she's like, what's been happening? Where's Dad? And she tells Vera, hey, we don't talk about this in front of the kids. We have to pretend like that's happening. We don't talk about this at all. Because throughout this whole time, Eunice and the family are still being watched by the military. Fast forward, Eunice has a meeting in Rubens' office with one of Rubens' friends. He runs a paper. So this guy tells Eunice in the office of Rubens that the military killed Rubens. And she says, what? I knew it. So we can go to the papers, we can go to the police. And he says no. Officially, they're saying they don't know Rubens' whereabouts. They never held Rubens. He was never in their interrogation rooms. They never interviewed him. They never arrested him. They never did any of that. They have no whereabouts of a Rubens. That's what they're saying officially. She's like, what? But they're lying. They're lying. But he said, we don't have proof. You don't have proof that they're lying. So we cannot go and say anything because there's no proof. And Eunice is taken aback by it because she has to figure out her emotions. She's crying, of course, but she has to get it together for her kids because how are you going to tell her kids the father is dead? She doesn't. So the next day, she makes a plan. She figures everything out. She gets all her money in order, of course. And she has dinner with her kids and she tells them, hey guys, everything's fine. I'm like, oh, where's Dad? We just don't know where Dad is. And she's like, hey, everything's going to be fine. We're going to figure it out. And she tells them, we're actually moving to Sao Paulo, Brazil. We're leaving Rio de Janeiro. And the kid's like, what? I don't want to move. What about Dad? What if Dad comes home and we're not here? She says, you have to leave right now because we have to be safe. I need help. Your grandparents are in Sao Paulo. And also I get to go back to school as well. And we're selling the house. It's being rented out as a restaurant. The last day the kids all leave and you see them driving away all sad. That was the end of 1970 time slot. Next, we have 1996. In 1996, you get the two youngest kids. Those are the main characters. And that point, you see Eunice, and you see all she's kind of done in the papers and stuff like that. She got her degree. She's a teacher now. Marcelo, her youngest son, the one who found the dog, he got paralyzed somehow. Doesn't say in the movie. I haven't looked it up yet. But he was paralyzed, so he's permanently in a wheelchair now. And the other daughter, it's just those two kids that are with Unise and that are part of this 1996 time slot. It's a very quick time slot. With this time slot, this is when we get the official death certificate of Rubens Paiva, finally. And with that death certificate, so much happens. You can file a lawsuit, a wrongful death lawsuit. You can do so many things when you finally get a death certificate of a loved one who was killed by the government. So they were waiting on that death certificate for decades after Eunice knew that Rubens was already dead. And that is the end of the time slot of 1996. Fast forward to 2014, and you see the whole family of different actors because they're older now. And they're all having a family reunion, all the kids and things like that. They don't specify each individual child, but the one in the wheelchair is son Marcelo. You can kind of like guesstimate who's who, but they don't all have speaking parts, so you really don't see them in the camera, at least most of the time. And in that scene, you see Unise, who's in a wheelchair now. She can't speak. I guess she's very, very elderly, very, very old. And she's watching the TV. They have a story on the news about Rubens and about how he and others were murdered in Brazil under the dictatorship from 1964 till 1985. So many are missing still today, including Rubens and others. And that's the end of I'm Still Here, starring Fernanda Torres, my winner for Best Actress of the Oscars 2025. So my condolences to the Paiva family. So what do I rate this? So I would rate that there's no such thing as a perfect movie, of course. And this movie is labeled as a docudrama. It's so well freaking done to me. I would rate this movie, honestly, I would rate this movie a 4.5 out of 5. For me personally, my opinion, this movie was acted down, perfectly casted. I don't know much about Portuguese speaking actors, but Fernanda Torres, they casted the husband, they casted the kids, they casted everyone, so the maid, everyone's reactions in the moment was so well thought out. Directing was so well done. So well done. The editing, the color grading for this movie, the styling for this freaking movie, to style accurately, because I Googled what people were wearing in Brazil in the 1970s just to see, like, did they style them well? They did. They did. So I would rate this movie a 4.5 out of 5. The reason it's not a 5 out of 5 stars for me is because it wasn't the easiest to follow. I felt like, and that could just be me being slow or like, not all there. That could just be a me thing. But I found that I needed name cards on like who is who. There were so many freaking kids and so many different characters here, there, here, there. I was like in that movie writing names down on my notes just so I could remember, and it still didn't work out. You will always get points from me if you're teaching the world about your history, about your culture, about what you guys went through. You'll always get points from me, and hopefully everyone gives them points for that. I'm Still Here is the underdog at the Academy for Best Actress, at least. It is the underdog. Usually, movies that aren't English speaking go into the foreign category, the foreign language category. They go into the other category. They never put them in the main categories. So I find that this year in the Oscars, it is unprecedented, at least right now, because they don't often do this. They have so many different genres. They have so many different types of movies. They have so many different variations of actresses in the Best Actress category, which I think is phenomenal and I think is amazing. But I think Fernanda Torres acted her behind off. When talent meets hard work, meets opportunity, this is Fernanda Torres' year. She deserves this freaking Oscar. And I think that when you're coming from Latin America or in a Latin American country, yeah, they may have funding in Brazil, but to bring it over to the United States, to bring it over to around the world, it's not easy. That's why you do not see many films from Brazil in major theaters or in any theaters at that. They go either straight to streaming or they go unnoticed, honestly. So the fact that they were able to be nominated and Fernanda Torres is able to be nominated for Best Actress is outstanding in its own. The different moods of the film, because you're happy in some points when they're with their whole family in the beginning, you're like, oh, this is so nice, but you're waiting for the other two to drop, because even though I didn't know the plot of the movie, how it's shot, the sound engineers, the editing, the acting, you felt heavy. I felt heavy throughout the whole freaking movie. Like, I just didn't know what would happen next. It was so worrisome. And even though it's not fantastical and they didn't put crap that was never in there, they didn't make it seem like, oh my gosh, this crazy scene happened. Even it didn't happen in real life. They didn't do any of that, which I'm very happy about because this film is a testament to when you do a docudrama, when you base a film off of a true story. You do not have to put sparkles and nonsense and fiction into your movie to make it watchable because you find that maybe the events that happen weren't as interesting as it should be to the audience. You don't have to do all that. You can rely on the story, rely on the actors if you cast them right to do their jobs, and voila, an amazing film would be made that's watchable and it's not boring. Now, I've said everything I wanted to say in this whole review. I hope you enjoyed it. Do I believe Fernanda Torres deserves the Oscar or should win the Oscar? Because everyone deserves the Oscar, you know? Should win the Oscar. I definitely 100% believe Fernanda Torres should win the Oscar. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching It Girl in Review with me, Negative Nancy J. Gibson. I'll see you guys in a few days this time for an upload on the Oscar outcomes of 2025. Ciao!